Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive into today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
This headline from New York Magazine is pushing back on this logic, saying, quote, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and saying so is not incitement. What strikes me, Jonathan, is many of the rhetorical attacks that we're seeing from Harris and Walz and the Harris campaign are using Trump's own words. They're just highlighting things that he has said, his own quotes. The bulk post from the Kamala HQ account is Trump in his own words. Do you see Democrats shifting their message? Should they?
No. What Trump is doing by trying to shift the blame onto Democrats is projection. Wow. That is all that Trump is. Anything he accuses someone of, just do a little search, and you will see that he is guilty of it himself. And he's trying to deflect, and he's trying to project.
Oh, that's fun. A little MSNBC action there. Jonathan Capehart and company at MSNBC. It's projecting. Trump is the real threat to democracy. It's what we've always been telling you. He's just projecting his actual threat to democracy. Let's stay focused on who the real threat to democracy is. These people have no conscience. You know, I've long called them the godless souls and slanderous news media. They proved that time and again. Obviously, I am not the great one. This is Brian Mudd here with you. Mark had absolutely every intention, like until 15 minutes ago, Mark had absolutely every intention on being right here with you. I can't imagine the kind of pain he's in. He had major surgery on Tuesday. He was a gamer all day, looking forward to spending time with you as we are now just 47 days away from Election Day. And just the pain in trying to deal with that, he was not able to make a go of it tonight. And he's going to be back absolutely as soon as possible. You want to talk about a gamer and an American hero. Again, it's Mark. I can't begin to imagine what he's been dealing with and going through in just 2 days removed from that surgery. And, he was almost here with you tonight. But I'm going to walk you through some things because interesting perspective I have for you this week on the whole threat to democracy thing. I lived about 2 miles south of Mar-a-Lago. The Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach is a few miles west of us where it happened. And so we're kind of right in the middle of the mix. When I say we, I'm talking about my home station, WJNO in West Palm Beach. My wife and I, as we were enjoying our wine out back, beautiful Sunday after. Actually, it was a little bit rainy. It was beautiful, and then it became stormy. So we were actually kind of dealing with the wine and the storm at about the time that everything started to hit the fan Sunday afternoon, and then went into action working on this particular case. So obviously, the assassination attempt, the second assassination attempt of the former president, has been front and center as you have your godless souls and slanderous news media that is back on the message of Trump being the threat to democracy. Unbelievable, these people. Been right in the middle of a lot of what's been going on. A lot of the details that you probably haven't heard at the national level. Some things that definitely are not being dealt with properly at the local level. And by that, I'm talking about specifically within Palm Beach County. So I'm going to walk you through the Democrat state attorney in Palm Beach County. His name is Dave Ehrenberg. Speaking of MSNBC and your godless souls and slanderous news media, he is a regular contributor to MSNBC. He's on Morning Schmo weekly and does a lot of the other shows and other things. And I've known Dave for an awfully long time. I think on a personal level, I've always liked him, and I've viewed him, even though he has been, a left-wing sounding board, as a solid prosecutor. But the things that I have witnessed this week are beyond the pale. And I can't help but to think that the narrative that is out there, that Trump is the threat to democracy, is actually clouding some of what's happening at the local level. The state of Florida is stepping in. But first, I just want to talk a little bit again about the whole threat to democracy thing. Quoting President Biden, of course, he walked back, just a very short memory jog here. President Biden fundraiser earlier this year, when he said there is one existential threat, and it's Donald Trump. One existential threat. Donald Trump. And he's talking about in the world. Not Xi Jinping, not Vladimir Putin, not the mullahs in Iran, not Hamas, not Little Rocket Man in North Korea, not the terrorist foreign or domestic. No. None of those people or groups were determined by the current president of the United States as the one existential threat. The greatest threat on this planet, according to Biden, was Trump. And by the way, I know even kind of like hearing that and thinking about that is kind of weird because he is like so far removed from being the actual president of the United States. When you think about that for a moment, you're like, hold on. I guess that's technically true. He is. Oh, and it's almost like a cringe moment, right? Yeah, I mean, it's who's really running the show day to day. But anyway, that's a sidebar. And you remember that it was on a call with his donors less than a week before the first assassination attempt that Biden said, it is time to put Trump in the bullseye. Well, shoot. Was there ever any accountability for that kind of rhetoric? Mm-mm. And remember, these are the people, the words are violence. Remember the whole thing about Trump and it's his rhetoric, right? I mean, he's the bad, evil orange man because he divides people and he's crass and all. So they are all about Trump being the evil bad man because of the verbiage he uses. But he's the threat to democracy when the current president of the United States said that he is, Donald Trump, the one existential threat, when less than a week before the first assassination attempt, he told donors to put Trump in the bullseye. You never had any apology, any acknowledgement that any of that was wrong. All you had from the administration was that we don't condone violence, and you heard a little bit of you got to take the temperature down. But of course, they never did. Now, what's changed between the first and second assassination attempt? Well, on the first one, you obviously had Joe Biden as the presidential candidate. You had Donald Trump actually getting shot. Much better police work, at least for the Secret Service agent that got ahead of where Trump was on the golf course to preemptively take action. The Secret Service is obviously still broken in terms of its protocol. We'll talk about that a little bit in a bit. But you take a look at the other element, of course, well, it's Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is the presidential candidate. And what is it that the vice president has had to say on this same train of thought? Well, it was to MSNBC. You notice how MSNBC is like the aggregator of everything that is absurd on its face. Like you have the godless souls and slanderous news media is a broad compass, right? Your alphabet networks. This is CNN. You get them there. There are a lot of people that are part of the umbrella that go into your godless souls and slanderous news media. Of course, most of the legacy print people and all that. But MSNBC, man, that's like a world unto itself in terms of the radicals that are just in that cesspool daily. But anyway, quoting Comrade Kamala to MSNBC, and this was in reference to Trump and comments of his about illegal immigrants. She said, "It is language that is meant to divide us, It is language that I think people have rightly found similar to the language of Hitler. We've seen this before. We know where this could go. So stand up and fight for what is right. So again, you think about this in context for a moment, because Trump is the one who is projecting. He's the real threat to democracy. Okay, so Kamala Harris, independent of Joe Biden, said that people have rightly found his language to that of Hitler. And that is appropriate. His language is like Hitler's. And you know what happens? We've seen this before. When somebody sounds like Hitler, you know what I mean? So you got to go stand up and fight for what is right. Now, what does that mean? Like, if you're literally confronted with Hitler and somebody tells you to stand up and fight for what is right, what is the implication there? And of course, we're talking about to radicals. And let's be mindful, who is it that could stomach MSNBC? Like, taking it on the level anyway. Most of these are not going to be well-adjusted people in society, right? You're sitting there and this is what you're drinking day in and day out. So, But Trump is the threat to democracy. Now, who is the real threat to democracy? Is it Donald Trump, who's been targeted twice in nearly as many months for assassination? Or is it Kamala Harris? Is it Joe Biden? Is it the DNC establishment at large who have radicalized their whack job base into believing that Donald Trump is akin to Adolf Hitler? Is it your godless souls and slanderous news media? Your dishonest news media? Now, they don't demand answers from Harris. They won't demand a retraction from her rhetoric, same as they didn't from Joe Biden before her. And you be it by the grace of God, and you really start to think about God and the implications here and these assassination attempts and the things that just kind of fell in place for him to still be alive today. Be it by the grace of God, quite literally in multiple respects, Donald Trump is still alive today. But you make no mistake that what's happened here and the threat that continues to be the causation is exactly what you heard in that opening clip from MSNBC. He's just projecting. You got to keep the focus here. The real message is that Trump is still the threat to democracy. These people aren't going to be happy until and unless they get him killed. Because if you had a conscience, you wouldn't dream of saying something like that. It is so beyond the pale. In July, following that first assassination attempt, I mentioned it then, and it was absolutely true. It remains that Donald Trump's blood was on every Democrat's hands that ever falsely called him a threat to democracy. So, too, is the blood of the murdered Trump supporter and the others that were injured there. And you had, after that first one, the words of former Attorney General Bill Barr. Remember, he's a Trump critic, by the way. He said the Democrats have to stop their grossly irresponsible talk about Trump being an existential threat to democracy. He is not. Okay, have they? Obviously not. 2 assassination attempts now, and you still have the narrative out there on the air today that Trump is projecting Trump is a threat to democracy. Godless, soulless, slanderous news media. You'll have people that say we're in a battle for the heart and soul of this country. Oh, quite literally. To the extent that there is a soul to this country, there's an actual physical battle for that soul going on right now. We got to do something about it. And that happens at the ballot box. Be right back. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
The cracks in our economy are widening by the day. We've got a labor market that's cooling faster than expected. Unemployment jumped to the highest since the end of 2021. The market could be in free fall any day as investors panic over a potential recession. Now, some bank stocks are getting hammered as fears of a downturn grow. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts to prop things up. In uncertain times like these, you need a solid plan for your wealth. That's where gold comes in. It's been the ultimate safe haven for as long as we've used money. And when it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're a top-rated American gold company and can help you protect your hard-earned money. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait. Call 800-900-8000 today. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Life is hard. Politics is really brutal. It's a contact sport. And to think that the other side in this campaign wants people to be afraid and filled with anger and hatred and trying to hurt other people is so terrible and so un-American. And now we have with, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, two happy warriors, two people who will fight for us, who will work for us, and don't want us to hate each other. They want us actually to find some common ground.
So the thing is, like my jaw just drops and it hangs. I can't really do that because, this is radio. That's just dead air. But surely that's your reaction, right? As you listen to Hillary Clinton. What? Huh? Hold on. You do realize with everything you're saying about Donald Trump, your people have tried to kill him twice. You do realize this. And by the way, there's even more. Not only do we know that there have been these threats, like the Iranian plots that we're told about after the first assassination attempt, but there are all kinds of other threats that don't even make the national news. I'm going to tell you about one of those that happened locally. That is a pretty significant story. Somebody encouraging the murder of Donald Trump and of J.D. Vance. And locally in Palm Beach County. And also how that's being handled by the left. But it is stunning. There is just no compunction. And that was Hillary again on MSNBC today. Again, where all cesspools apparently derive. But you have this narrative, they're going all in on it, that Trump is still the threat to democracy. And you really wonder at a certain level, are they rooting for this? You hear about politics is a contact sport and everything else. You listen to their language. You listen to what they're trying to do in riling up their base, their people. You hear somebody like Bill Barr, and again, what he said, the Democrats have to stop their grossly irresponsible talk about Trump being an existential threat to democracy. He is not. And here they are doing it today. And what's even more alarming about this is how complicit your godless souls and slanderous news media is. First of all, an NBC property. I understand it's the left-wing arm of a left-wing network. But they're hosting this. They are a forum for this. Do you hear any condemnation out there about this in mainstream news media? Do you hear anybody calling on them to issue retractions, to apologize? Maybe this is dangerous. There are people who are trying to kill Trump. No, you don't. Wow. Be right back. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
This is Mark Levin with an urgent message. We are living in grave and dark economic times that are going to get worse. We just saw an abysmal jobs report while unemployment shot up to the highest level since the end of 2021. Meanwhile, the stock market looks like a gamble. Many banks are getting crushed as recession fears mount. The S&P Banks Index fell 2.4% in a single day. That's a lot. Regional banks fell nearly 3%. That's even more. These are bad signs. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts. You need to protect your wealth. That's where diversification and gold comes in. It's been a bedrock of wealth preservation for centuries. And the best company I know of is Advantage Gold. Their experts can help you protect your savings from economic chaos. Call now, 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. That's 800-900-8000. Don't wait. Call now. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Mark Levin, the great one.
The great one, Mark Levin.
Dial in now, 877-381-3811.
He is more incoherent. He is angrier. He is lashing out all the time at everybody. He's filled with grievance and rage. And, you know, in my acceptance speech at the convention way back in 2016, I said, you know, you can't trust somebody with nuclear weapons who you can bait with a tweet, because I saw that in him at the time. A lot of people didn't.
It is stunning, these people. I mean, again, Hillary Clinton, just the threat to democracy thing. And there is so much there. Because, again, when you start talking about the nuclear weapons, I mean, this is the one that I get the biggest kick out of for two reasons. The first was what I said going all the way back to the 2016 campaign when she was the candidate. But especially after having had him for 4 years as president. The nuclear weapon argument is maybe the single best geopolitical reason to vote for Donald Trump. And why do I say that? Well, you can have it either way. If you are bat crap crazy and you sit there and you drool and you watch MSNBC all day and you watch Hillary Clinton and you heard her say that along with a lot of other just nonsense and really actually hateful stuff, is there's a lot of hate that is being spewed from her. But if you go along with the narrative that, oh man, he's got such a temper, you just can't trust him. He might just flip that switch and fire off nukes himself. Well, think about this. If you believe Donald Trump is that unhinged, that he would just like willy-nilly, he's in a bad mood, he's going to go fire some nukes at somebody. If you're a bad actor, are you going to be more or less inclined to provocate that guy? So if you do believe what Hillary Clinton is saying, and you really do think he's the crazy bad orange man with access to nukes if he's president, that would be the greatest deterrent to bad actors behaving badly, right? Because he might actually be the guy that would do it. Now, more reasonably, we saw that it was just the opposite. We had no new wars with Donald Trump. There was only de-escalation of conflict. We had relative peace in the Middle East, including peace being brokered in Israel. We had Jerusalem recognize all the presidents who said it, Trump actually delivered on. And you take a look at how everything fell apart. And by the way, the reason it happened, twofold. Probably because you do have some people that are dumb enough out there to think like Hillary Clinton does geopolitically around the world. And so maybe they didn't do things because they were scared of him. But more than that, he had credibility. And it all came down to what he did immediately. When he said he was going to bomb the blank out of Hamas, he became president. What did he do? Or Hamas. As we go back to the old caliphate for our friends who had run their caliphate over in the Middle East, we had Trump that said he was going to put an end to it. And what did he do? He got in there and he bombed the blank out of them, ended the caliphate. And that was that. And suddenly all the bad actors going, holy cow, he really will do that. And so he had credibility with the bad actors of the world in that moment. If he says it, he will do it. We probably don't want to be in a position where he's going to say it. So that's that. But you continue to get these just horrible sentiments out of people like Hillary Clinton. And, I had somebody who very innocently, but also very seriously asked me earlier, why is it that prominent Democrats get to threaten Donald Trump? Why do they get to do it? And a lot of the names that you're familiar with, specifically, the listener asked me about Maxine Waters, Johnny Depp, Elizabeth Warren, Madonna, Chuck Schumer, Cynthia Johnson, and yes, Kamala Harris. Why is it that they get away? They just get to do this. And the root of the question is because ultimately, if you or I were to go into a public forum and say the kinds of things that they have said, what's going to happen to us? Especially, you direct it at Biden, or if you direct it at Harris, what's going to happen to you? So why is it that all these prominent people can go out there and say all these horrible things? And there is a really instructive line of thinking that goes along with that we'll dive into here as well. Want to work in a couple comments. We've got Patrick in Kentucky. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call.
You bet.
I was calling about the second assassination attempt on President Trump. There's a few things that don't make sense, which I may have missed it, but I've not heard. Was there shots fired from the shooter at President Trump?
There were not. The only shots fired were from the Secret Service agent preemptively firing at the suspect.
And was he close to President Trump or?
Within 500 yards, yeah. There are the reports anywhere from 300 to 500 yards, somewhere in that range.
Okay. I didn't understand if it was in, I heard the 300 to 500 range is where the shooter was of President Trump, but the Secret Service guy, it's just funny how you show me a guy that can see a barrel of a weapon that's about maybe the diameter of your ring finger sticking in some bushes at 300 to 500 yards. That's not possible.
Well, so what happened there, and this is the great police work by the Secret Service agent who spotted this, that also belies the horrible protocols that were in place here. I don't think you would need to be the Secret Service director. I don't think you would need to be a special agent in charge to think, all right, well, if Donald Trump is going to go play a round of golf today, what do you say we go ahead and bring some agents out before he hits that course and just kind of do a once over all the way around this place? What do you say? Just a quick security sweep? I think any of us, without any of that kind of training, would think that would be like the natural first thing you would do. It almost is like common sense. So what didn't happen? There was no security sweep of the golf course at Trump International in West Palm Beach. And the other thing, if you watch the news accounts of it, this is a very busy area around there. And you might have even heard that, yeah, there's the county jail's right there. I mean, it's like right next to the golf course. You have a lot that goes on in this area. It's a very busy area of West Palm Beach. And a lot of times, if you're familiar with West Palm Beach, but if you're not, maybe you've seen pictures, there are a lot of things that people get confused about. You have Palm Beach, which is the island, and that is where Mar-a-Lago is. You have West Palm Beach, which begins on the other side of the Intracoastal, hence west. Just a little thing I'll let you in on for those of us that live here is it's always hilarious. For some people, they get annoyed, especially Palm Beachers specifically. There's a little thing about West Palm versus Palm Beach with some folks, but it's kind of hilarious to, you'll hear people that are reporting on Palm Beach and calling it West Palm because it's quite literally named West Palm because it's west of Palm Beach. And so West Palm, mainland, other side of the Intracoastal. And to the extent that you see pictures, you'll see the downtown area. That downtown area begins at the waterfront along the Intracoastal and then extends out for, I don't know, approximately a mile and a half towards the west. And so downtown West Palm Beach is actually east. Where Trump International is a section of West Palm in, very busy thoroughfares. And west, you're talking west several miles now, of downtown West Palm Beach. It's not right there. And so these are your various different points just to kind of talk about. And so I mentioned that in the security context for this reason. It's all the more reason why you would have just a commonsensical thing. Hey, let's go sweep the golf course, because there are always a lot of people all the way around there. And as we came to learn, you had the attempted assassin who was camped out for 12 hours. 12 hours. Had they done any kind of security sweep, they would have found him on the front end. Okay, so this is where the Secret Service is broken. On the flip side of it, if you're talking about the difference in the response, we don't need to relive the failures of the first assassination attempt. But in this case, the way it works when Trump is playing golf, there is the detail that is right there with him. And then you also have a detail that is working ahead of him. So they are always staying a hole, in some cases, 2 holes ahead of where he is playing. And so one of those agents that was on a hole ahead of where he was is just scanning the whole area, basically sweeping it in that moment. And that's when he spots in the bushes right there that gun and fired. Apparently immediately just fired, did not take any chances. There are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, he could have gone ahead and pulled the trigger and put everybody around there in jeopardy. So he was taking the preemptive action. So the Secret Service agent that responded did everything you want, everything that didn't happen that first time, where you're like, what the heck? So, proactive action, but broken protocols. And again, we'll dive a little bit more into that a little bit later. Let's go to Kevin in North Dakota. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Brian. You're very well spoken. Thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
But I'm an older American, okay? I remember Apollo 11 and things before that. And so I've been there and done that. I've seen Gerald Ford, Nixon, Carter, all of them. And what I don't understand is, why are we not jumping on social media, the Republicans, whether it's the Republican Party or friends of the Republican parties, and putting out YouTube or whatever videos about, don't forget what they did to us, or
now,
you get
one thing, Kevin, I agree with you generally. Like, there's no doubt the left, and a lot of it has to do with, all the pop culture icons that associate with them and everything else. It's like the built-in, social media influencer thing that is part of that apparatus. Although, don't discount Elon Musk these days, because, X is, highly relevant. And you do have Elon that is even in his ability to influence out there doing that on occasion. So you do have a much greater situation than you used to. But have you taken in any of the Trump team's social media stuff by chance?
No, I don't. I don't have the resources. I live alone. But what I also don't understand, is if you're going to put out anything on social media, I wish I could. Because if Biden did not have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House when he first took office, he would not have opened the border. So I don't care if they vote Kamala Harris. Just don't give her the House or the Senate. But
Kevin, I have to disagree with you there for a lot of reasons. The border started to be open day one through executive action. You didn't have a law that was passed to open that border. Joe Biden started with a day one executive action, literally gets signed in. He goes in there. He stops the border wall. Next one, he rescinded Remain in Mexico, the policies that actually worked. Those weren't laws. Those were Trump policies fought in the courts. So, no, that's actually incorrect. By the way, what I was going to say, Trump's social media team is phenomenal. So they're really great. They're up on the ball. Brian Mudd in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
The cracks in our economy are widening by the day. We've got a labor market that's cooling faster than expected. Unemployment jumped to the highest since the end of 2021. The market could be in free fall any day as investors panic over a potential recession. Now, some bank stocks are getting hammered as fears of a downturn grow. Even the Fed is talking about rate cuts to prop things up. In uncertain times like these, you need a solid plan for your wealth. That's where gold comes in. It's been the ultimate safe haven for as long as we've used money. And when it comes to gold, I trust Advantage Gold. They're a top-rated American gold company and can help you protect your hard-earned money. Call Advantage Gold now at 800-900-8000 for a free gold investment kit and to see if you qualify for $1,000 in free silver. Don't wait. Call 800-900-8000 today. That's 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
There is a Harris-Walz administration that you would want to play a part in it, whether officially or unofficially?
Well, certainly unofficially, I want to be as helpful as I can and would do anything I was asked to be helpful.
Yes. Don't we want more of her? More of that. Jeez. Can you imagine what a blank show that would be? Harris and her cackling and Hillary being Hillary. And then what is Walz, by the way, other than the original weirdo? You know, Hillary was saying on MSNBC earlier that, you know, Trump was projecting and he was the real threat to democracy. The biggest projector in this race of anything, the real original weirdo, which is Walz, the original white dude for Harris. What a pack that would be, and how screwed our country would be. Good gosh. All right, so we got a lot to discuss. So join us for the second hour. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Slidell, Louisiana, Willie, Democrat, good morning.
Good morning. I just want to say I'm a very patriotic American. I did 20 years in the military. 2 tours in Vietnam, wounded in 1966, went back in 68. And I look at myself and think about, we are supposed, as a military man, we're supposed to close with, kill, capture, destroy the enemy by all means available. And to see we let this man, Trump, destroy America, and I look at it and say, well, these two people have to step up and take that shot. I'm 83, nothing to lose.
I'm sorry, Willie, you're not advocating violence, are you?
Not violence. I'm talking about defending my country.
All right.
Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? That was C-SPAN yesterday. Good old Willie, just part of the Democrat base these days, right? Just patriotic American. Take that shot. Uh-huh. Now, let me ask you. When JFK was taken down, what was the country's sentiment at that point? When you had in 75 2 attempts that were made on Gerald Ford, what was the sentiment by even Democrats back then? When Ronald Reagan was shot? What's wrong with this country? What's broken with people that you could have sentiment like that? Brian Mudd here for Mark Levin. Look, Mark had absolutely every intention on being here with you right up until showtime. He was going to play through the pain, but he wanted to make sure that he could do a good job for you. And in the end, the pain a bit too much. And so, Mark is absolutely going to be back with you as soon as absolutely possible. I would be surprised if he's not able to make a run at this thing tomorrow for you. Corey, he had major surgery on Tuesday. So that I was shocked when he was going to make a go of it today. So it's, an honor and pleasure being here with you always. I just really wish, the past couple of weeks, it wasn't like this. And thankfully, Mark's surgery was successful. And, let's pray for a quick recovery for him and for him not to be in pain. But, Mark, the ultimate gamer, you want to talk about a patriotic American hero, that is the great one. I am the host of the Brian Mudd Show, my home station WJNO in West Palm Beach, which has been right in the middle of everything with the second Trump assassination attempt this week. I have a lot of additional perspective to share with you about all of that. My podcast, The Brian Mudd Show, wherever you get your podcasts, and you can follow me socially at Brian Mudd Radio. I think about people like Willie, and I listen to all these prominent people and these networks that will perpetuate Trump is a threat to democracy. What is wrong with people in this country that they could feel that way? I think in so many different ways. Like, we have absolute disdain. And I say we as those of us who are constitutionalists, those of us who believe in the country as it was founded. We loathe the destruction of this country, the eroding of the Constitution, and of the principles that this country is founded upon under this administration. Do you wish any harm on Joe Biden? Do you wish any harm on Kamala Harris? I most certainly don't, and I never have. There's never been a time in my life, not one, where I thought, man, somebody should do something to hurt these people, let alone take them out. But this has become the base case, the narrative on the left anymore. And you have to think about what is so broken with somebody that they go to that place. And what happens is it's the absence of morality. And I've talked about this many times with regard to education. The point where we let God get away from us in society, and you can trace this back to the Department of Education, really going back to 64, Supreme Court ruling, taking God out of the classroom, and then the Department of Education making sure that happened across the country starting in 1981. And you can take a look at the amount of faithlessness in society. You can take a look at the increase in mental health issues. You can take a look at the increase in violence in society. It all goes in a straight line together this way. And it's not a coincidence. When you have a sense of faith, morality, you don't go to places like that. You're not wired that way. It's reprehensible. It's incomprehensible for that reason. But now they are consumed by hate. You have to be consumed by hate to wish harm on another person. That is just your political opponent, right? So evil is winning on the left. Democrats are the party of evil. Because again, it is evil to provide a safe place for threats and violence against your political opponent. And the hollow words, they don't foster that in anything else. It's all a bunch of nonsense. And I mentioned there's a listener who very innocently, but also I think somewhat instructively, it's like, why is there never any repercussion for people like Maxine Waters, Johnny Depp, Elizabeth Warren, Madonna, all these people that have said these horrible things over time, let alone the president of the United States himself? And it's a really good question, right? You're not allowed to use, we're all entitled to freedom of expression. We're not entitled to use that expression to harm others. And when you have these kinds of threats that have been out there and it goes unaccounted for, I think it's arrived to the place where you have a Willie, where now I'm just going to call into C-SPAN and say, yeah, take that shot. Go take him out. How many people, if you're on social media, How many people did you come across that said, man, too bad that he wasn't a good enough shot? Let alone the stuff that's been said this week after the second attempt. What is wrong? What's broken with people? Well, I think it's been fostered because for years, what have we had? You know, you had a Maxine Waters who said, I will go and take Trump out tonight. And I don't think she meant, you know, like on a date or, you know, to have a good time. I think Maxine Waters had some hostility in her. She's been known to that. You had Johnny Depp, who pontificated when was the last time an actor assassinated a president. You had Elizabeth Warren say, take him out back. He's a danger to democracy. You had Madonna say, yes, I thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House, which was fun because that was along with all the other nasty women that day at the inauguration, where you had Madonna within proximity of the White House with a microphone in front of thousands of people saying that she's thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House. Again, no implications here, no problems, just you go about your life. Now, if you did something like that, directed the other way, how do you think that would work out? And so here we are today, where you have hate being spewed on MSNBC and other networks, the perpetuating of all of this hate and negativity, continuing to stir up people so that you have sentiment like what you just heard from that caller in the C-SPAN. It's the patriotic thing to do. And again, this is where the radicalization comes in. And it was part of the point I was making in the first hour. If you say this man is Adolf Hitler, this guy's the second coming. And again, Kamala Harris has said this herself. This guy is the second coming of Hitler in so many words. She said it's right to compare his rhetoric to Hitler. And you know what happens. So stand up and fight. If you are confronted with the second coming of Adolf Hitler, what are you going to think the appropriate action is? Not to let Hitler take over, right? So they have so convinced their radicalized base, they've radicalized their base to think this way, that we're in this place. And so you fast forward to the second assassination attempts. Ryan Ruth, the second attempted Trump assassin, literally repeated the words of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Those of Trump being a threat to democracy. He used the exact verbiage they did. Now, is that just a coincidence? In recent years, you know, we've often talked of the two-tiered system of justice. But one that's been overlooked is the selective prosecution of those the Biden administration declared a threat to democracy. We know what happened to everybody in J6. You know, if you so much looked at the Capitol and took a picture of it, January 6, 2021, you are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, right? Even though those people never had any legitimate chance of overthrowing the government. Here you have people that are rooting for the people that are attempting to assassinate the former president of the United States, who right now is the leading candidate to be the next president of the United States. What is the real threat to democracy here? Are they not trying to overthrow quote unquote democracy? And don't get me started about this being a representative republic. I mean, it annoys me every time I hear the whole threat to democracy thing because, well, we're not a democracy. There's a whole other issue about civics in this country. But nevertheless, what is the actual so-called threat to democracy? Trying to eliminate the executive branch and saying in so many words that he represents a threat to democracy. He's Hitler, so you got to stand up and fight against that. What does that mean? What does standing up and fighting without any additional context mean? Well, we've seen what it means to a lot of these people, right? We've seen how dangerous that actually is. It's one of the many course corrections in this two-tiered system of justice because it's gone unprosecuted. Had this been prosecuted, maybe things would look a little bit different. If there were accountability, especially for some of these higher profile people who have used their freedom of expression in a way that is not appropriate, maybe things would have, the temperature actually would have come down. Maybe some of these people like Willie wouldn't have been so radicalized. Maybe we wouldn't have had 2 assassination attempts on the future and God willing president of the United States, but we have. Now, there are a lot of pieces that go into all this, and one of them is the prosecution of the case against Ryan Ruth, because I know a lot of people have been concerned hey, can we really trust the federal government who's taken the lead in this prosecution against the second Trump assassin? And there's a lot to it. This is the right thing for justice. This is the right thing for justice. Those happen to be the words of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as he and our state's Attorney General Ashley Moody were at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office on Tuesday in a presser saying, hey, we're launching our own investigation into the wannabe Trump assassin, Ryan Ruth, as he ended up explaining, as we came to learn. And one thing to remember about DeSantis, he's a Harvard-trained lawyer. He's a former JAG officer. He knows the law as well as anybody I've come across this side of Mark Levin. He said Florida can prosecute what the federal government potentially can't in this case. I'm going to pick up there next. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
I'm going to let you in on a little wireless trick that can cut your cell phone bill in half every single month. Other major carriers want you to believe you need unlimited data so they can overcharge you. Here's the fact. Most of you are buying way more data than you'll ever need and you'll ever use. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, only charges you for data you actually want. Listen to this. For $25 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data plus mobile hotspot. Do you know what you can do with 5 gigs of data? You can browse the internet for 135 hours, stream 1,000 songs, or watch 10 hours of video. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless. Get 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switching is painless. It's easy. There's no contract, no activation fee. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month on top of all the other savings when you sign up with Pure Talk.
I wanted to know if you think it's time for Democrats to stop calling Trump a threat to democracy.
No, fact of the matter is that he is a threat to democracy.
I wanted to know if you think it's time for Democrats to tone down the rhetoric.
Well, I think it's important for all of us to tone down the rhetoric. Let's make this an election about policy.
Do you think it's time for Democrats to stop calling Trump a threat to democracy?
No, I think we should be clear that he is a threat to democracy.
Do you think that the rhetoric, though, needs to be toned down?
I think his rhetoric should be toned down, absolutely.
Do you think it's time for Democrats to stop calling Trump a threat to democracy?
Listen, these are the facts. He is a threat, period, point blank.
Point blank. They like using the language, too. Point blank what? Take that shot? Is that where you're going? I mean, unconscionable, these people. Again, this is Fox's Hillary Vaughn to Democrats in Capitol Hill. You hear the reaction, and you see what's being stirred up on MSNBC, on Godless Souls and slanderous news media outlets. Here, Trump, 2 assassination attempts now, and they're like, no, keep it up. As Maxine Waters might say, you keep pushing back on them, right? Something is fundamentally broken in these people. There's a lack of morality. There's a lack of right and wrong. And by the way, if this is the way they feel about Trump, how do you think they feel about you? A lot of the times they will tell you how they feel, but also how are they going to govern? Well, we've had kind of an idea. But if you think about it, Biden in his own way is not exactly Kamala Harris, is he? And so when you bring somebody even more radical into the mix, what do you think you're going to get? Now, I mentioned that it is really important we start having accountability for people who are threatening to kill Donald Trump. Maybe that would tone things down if he had some real accountability for people who are actually calling for the assassination of the former and, God willing, future president. But also for the second assassin, for him to be held accountable under the law to the fullest extent. And so this is where Governor DeSantis on Tuesday said that Florida is going to step in. And he explained that under federal law, the federal government could only pursue the attempted murder charge from the assassination attempt on Sunday if Donald Trump were an active government official or if he was president-elect. Can you imagine? There's apparently the federal statute on this doesn't apply to somebody who isn't an active government official or isn't president-elect in his case. And so insert a couple other elements to this. At the local level, one of the things I'm sure you have not heard about, Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg. Speaking of MSNBC, you will frequently hear him spout off on that network. And I've always viewed Dave, even though he is a left-wing Democrat, as being a solid prosecutor. But not this week. Interesting turn of events here. On Sunday afternoon late, when you first had the press conference announcing the details at that time about Ryan Ruth, the second Trump assassin, he said, "I'm here because our prosecutors are currently working up warrants and a motion of pretrial detention for the suspect." So at that point, he said his office was immediately helpful. He was working. He's going to bring charges and everything else. But the next morning, so that's 5 p.m. on Sunday, the next morning, 8 o'clock, he said, "We won't have anything to do with this. It's all feds." What happened between 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday and 8 o'clock Monday morning? You think his friends on the left, his MSNBCers, the administration types, might have gotten to him? Now, his rationale for washing his hands in the case was that the federal government, while they were leading the investigation into the assassination attempt, that he didn't want to engage in any turf wars. Except that's absolute BS, because every single day in this country, you have state and federal investigations that work parallel to each other, state and federal charges. In fact, there are several types of offenses like drug trafficking, for example, or organized theft and fraud rings, where the single most common outcome is that you have state and federal charges that are brought. But the actual state attorney with jurisdiction in this case, nope, I'm out. It's all feds. Boy, that's odd, isn't it? And so why didn't he want to pursue this case? There are a lot of questions here. So Governor DeSantis, he had something to say about that. He said, "You have a responsibility in law enforcement and as a prosecutor to hold people accountable to the fullest extent of law. It'd be one thing to hand off to the feds if somehow they had more significant crimes. That's not the case here." I'm going to pick up, and we're also going to talk to Ohio candidate Bernie Moreno.
I'm going to let you in on a little wireless trick that can cut your cell phone bill in half every single month. Other major carriers want you to believe you need unlimited data so they can overcharge you. Here's the fact. Most of you are buying way more data than you'll ever need and you'll ever use. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, only charges you for data you actually want. Listen to this. For $25 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data plus mobile hotspot. Do you know what you can do with 5 gigs of data? You can browse the internet for 135 hours, stream 1,000 songs, or watch 10 hours of video. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless. Get 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switching is painless. It's easy. There's no contract, no activation fee. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month on top of all the other savings when you sign up with Pure Talk.
Mark Levin, the thunder on the right. Call in now, 877-381-3811.
Today is Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. All right, now as we take a look at the landscape, obviously we are down to 47 days away from Election Day. We've got voting that's going on in a lot of places already. And if you are in a place where you can vote, you get your butt out there and you vote. It is so important not to wait just until Election Day and hope it all works out. Life happens. You might not be able to get to the poll. Whatever it is, you get out there and you vote as early as you absolutely can. And if you're in Ohio, you might decide which party controls the Senate come January. Now, a couple things. If you like Chuck Schumer, well, you must really enjoy Sherrod Brown in Ohio. That's because you know the difference in the voting record between Brown and Schumer? About 2%. That's it. That's it. Don't you like it when you have phonies who will talk a more moderate game in a state like Ohio? only to go to D.C. and just screw you 6 ways to Sunday? Well, that's what Sherrod Brown's been doing. Bernie Moreno joining us now, someone who's looking to put an end to that kind of horrible representation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brian. I appreciate it. You laid it out perfectly. Sherrod Brown in Ohio pretends to be a moderate, pretends to be bipartisan. Make sure you're not standing up when you hear me say this. He pretends he likes President Trump, even though he's impeached him twice, called him a racist, calls his supporters racist, because he knows he can't win in a state that President Trump will win by probably 10 to 12 points. He knows that he has to lie in order to get some of those people who vote for President Trump to vote for him. But we're not going to let him get away with it. We're going to finally retire the old commie after 50 years in elected office.
It's nuts. So, amen. There's not a lot of polling that has come out in your race. But for the little bit that's there, it shows you trailing by a little bit. Very winnable for you, but down a little bit. What is your feel of the race as you've been making your way across the state?
So we started the race in the general about, obviously, March 19th was the primary. The next day, we were down somewhere between 5, 8, even 11 points. Sherrod Brown, of course, did not have a primary. He had a mountain of money. He spent it all. We were much more targeted. The polls have me either down 3. Some polls have me even. We just saw a public unveiling of an Americans for Prosperity poll that has me up 4. Has Sherrod at 43, me at 47. I think the race right now has us up. How many points is going to be the question, but we just started advertising about a week and a half ago, and so we're going to see that advertising kick in. The ads are going to be very simple. Here's what Sherrod Brown votes for. Here's what he's caused: high prices, open borders, instability all over the world, an assault on American energy, and a deficit that is absolutely going to be devastating to this country. That's his record. And so by highlighting that, we think we're going to win. Plus, because I've sold all my operating businesses and my kids are all grown, I campaign like crazy all over Ohio, doing 5 or 6 events a day. Sherrod Brown sits back. Quite frankly, he's kind of an old, tired guy, so he doesn't do much, sits in his recliner and pretends that he's working. But, these guys never break a sweat.
BernieMoreno.com, the website. Go there and help this campaign that could flip the United States Senate. You're in a situation that a lot of Republican candidates are in across the country, to where it seems like Trump is running ahead of you. Do you have any idea? Because every now and then you'll have some of the sentiment out there about the quality of a candidate. I think by all accounts you are a high quality, super strong candidate. Can you account for why there seems to be a deficit? Is that just an informational gap that exists?
Well, Donald J. Trump has exactly 100.0% name ID. Every human being in America knows who Donald J. Trump is. He was an extraordinarily successful businessman, wrote lots of books, had a TV series that was a record breaker. And by the way, was president of the United States for 4 years. In my case, I was a business guy. I didn't put my names on my buildings. So I go run for office 18 months ago. My name ID in Ohio was 4% with a 4% margin of error, by the way. So there was a chance nobody knew who I was, right? So it's not that we're trailing Trump on whether you'll vote for me or not. It's people just don't know who I am. The most important number is where Sherrod Brown is, because everybody knows where Sherrod Brown is, and this guy can't get past 45 or 46%. He should be cresting well over 50. I should be trying to convince some of the people who support him to support me. I just got to introduce myself to the people of Ohio, and once I do, we'll win this race.
And I think that's really important, because part of what goes on in a lot of news outlets is they will use the narrative that, hey, look at all these Republican Senate candidates. They're all running well behind Trump. They're not good quality candidates. They can't really win. And they try to set an expectation, and that can have a two-pronged effect. It can depress not only enthusiasm for a campaign, but it can depress donations and other resources that can be critical to flipping. And don't think that isn't part of the equation here. So what Bernie is saying is absolutely on point, that you've got a super strong candidate here. You've got a winner. You've got somebody who can win this race, and somebody who, if you get out there and support, actually will win this race. And, Bernie, let's talk about that a little bit, because for me, It is all about getting out there and voting absolutely as early as you possibly can so that your resources and the Republican Party's resources in Ohio can be dedicated to lower propensity voters. You got a lot of people that wait until Election Day that have every intention of voting. A lot of resources spent on trying to get those people to turn out. How important is it that people get out there and vote early? And specific to your campaign, what is it that people need to be doing in Ohio to help you to win?
Yeah, so to every Mark Levin listener in the state of Ohio, I want you to think of election as 4 quarters in a football game. We could start voting on October 8th. It's 4 weeks of early voting. So after the first week, we can see how we're doing by precinct, by county. We know if you voted, we don't need to call you, text you, email you, or knock on your door. So we save a fortune knowing that we can redeploy those resources to get others to vote who haven't voted yet. Then, of course, we have the second week, the second quarter, third week, third quarter, fourth week, fourth quarter. So we don't go into Election Day just hoping we're going to win. We know because we have the data of 4 weeks, 4 quarters of the game. So to your listeners, make a plan to vote 11 times. Follow me here, Brian. Okay? Go vote on October 8th. Get that over with. And then find 10 friends and bring them to vote early with you, whether it's that day or the following days, so that we can get those votes, get them in, bank them. We have to vote like our country depends on it because it does, Brian. This is the election where the American people are going to once and for all reject extremism, reject socialism, reject communism, reject leaders that don't represent American values, reject leaders that open our borders, unleash horrible inflation upon Americans. We're going to reject that. We're going to elect a president and a Senate that believes in liberty and freedom and restore American principles.
I want to ask you about one other thing. You mentioned you've been making the rounds in the state. There's a certain location within the state that has received a disproportionate amount of attention, and it has something to do with animals and in some Haitian migrants. What can you tell us about the situation in Springfield?
Well, the animals are the corrupt politicians that have corrupted our immigration laws to allow hundreds of thousands of Haitians to be brought into the country. By the way, in some cases, flown here on charter planes. You heard that right, Brian. We chartered planes to pick people up and bring them here and put them dependent on our fragile social safety net system. Why on earth would we do that? Now, of course, in Springfield, it's a total disaster. You've seen housing prices become unaffordable, so people can't afford to live there. Insurance costs have gone through the roof. The hospitals are on their knees. The public safety is on their knees. The school system is absolutely distraught. 1,600 people, kids in that school system that don't speak a word of English. Look, temporary protective status was not intended to be corrupted by people like Kamala Harris and Sherrod Brown. It was intended to be something that was a compassionate program for people who had problems in their other country for a very short period of time. We're going to let that expire in February 2026, and we're going to deport anybody who's here who shouldn't be here, whether they filed a fake asylum claim or their temporary protective status ended. We're going to spend taxpayer dollars helping American citizens, not foreign nationals. That's the fundamental difference between Republicans and these lunatics on the left. Because, by the way, that's common sense.
Amen. And I mean, yeah, what you talked about, I've done a lot of work on it over time, and it's insidious that we do have an app that is available for people that are non-citizens of this country to be able to go on there and obtain airfare into this country, have people waiting to onboard them and get them set up wherever they want to go. It's like, hey, we're in the United States. Do you want to go? Great. We'll go ahead and take you there. Biden-Harris, the Biden-Harris Air Force is going to walk you right into where you want to go. And, hey, you need some taxpayer resources once you get there. We'll go ahead and do that. Go ahead and take up some of the housing so all the affordable housing is gone while you're at it, too. Well, let's make sure you add to the inflation issue. And the reason, that this ended up happening, there are many. It's all part of the broader plan in terms of migration in this country with Biden and Harris to overwhelm the system. But the other thing is, hey, if you fly people over the border, you don't have the visual of the southern border. Then you have the stats that look a little bit better at the southern border, too. So that's all part of the deal. BernieMoreno.com. God bless you. Go win this race. Flip the Senate.
We're going to win, Brian. We're going to, if the people who are listening to your show vote early, this race can be called within half an hour, 8 o'clock Eastern. And we all know that the Republicans control the United States Senate. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everything you're doing. And Mark, if you're listening, get better. We're all praying for you.
Amen to all of that. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
I'm going to let you in on a little wireless trick that can cut your cell phone bill in half every single month. Other major carriers want you to believe you need unlimited data so they can overcharge you. Here's the fact. Most of you are buying way more data than you'll ever need and you'll ever use. Pure Talk, my cell phone company, only charges you for data you actually want. Listen to this. For $25 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and 5 gigs of data plus mobile hotspot. Do you know what you can do with 5 gigs of data? You can browse the internet for 135 hours, stream 1,000 songs, or watch 10 hours of video. Folks, stop overpaying for wireless. Get 5G coverage with Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN. Switching is painless. It's easy. There's no contract, no activation fee. You can even keep your phone and your number. Again, that's puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/LEVIN, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month on top of all the other savings when you sign up with Pure Talk.
In San Diego, we had an exponential increase in significant interest aliens. These are aliens with significant ties to terrorism. Prior to this administration, the San Diego sector averaged 10 to 15 SIA arrests per year. Once word was out the border was far easier to cross, San Diego went to over 100 SIAs in 2022, well over that in 2023, and even more than that registered this year. These are only the ones we caught. At the time, I was told I could not release any information on this increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests. The administration was trying to convince the public there was no threat at the border.
Isn't that interesting, right? So we're just talking about the border crisis and some of the insidious ways that this administration has gone about flouting the border. Like, for example, an app to where it's advertised. You have no idea about it in this country unless you've heard us report on it. But they will actually advertise in other countries that the United States has an app, but you can go on there and you can just fly in and the Biden administration will take care of you. All these insidious ways to usurp the legal immigration system in this country. All these insidious ways to undermine the principles of this country. There's no assimilation. And what has it done? It's driven up inflation. It has added to the crisis in housing, among many other things. All part of this. And what do you think is going to happen if Kamala Harris is elected president? Now, when you take a look at lawlessness, one of the things I think is instructive. Now, I was talking about the assassination attempt of Trump on Sunday and some of the weird things that are going on that I've been working on and covering locally. Working on in terms of this investigation starting Sunday afternoon, but also some of the local doings. So the state attorney, who is a left-wing Democrat, but always had been a solid prosecutor, I've known Dave for a very long time, Dave Ehrenberg. Sunday afternoon, he's going to be cooperative. Monday morning, before 8 o'clock, he's no longer cooperative, saying it's all the feds. What happened to Dave that the state attorney in Palm Beach County had jurisdiction to go after state charges? Now, here's the interesting thing about this. You know this Ryan Root, this second Trump assassin, the top charge that he can be running up on is a state charge. So he cannot be brought up on an attempted murder charge with the feds because the federal statute states that it has to be an active government official, or in Trump's case, he would have to be president-elect. So the feds can't, right now they've only got him on 2 federal gun charges. That's it. So the state is stepping in investigating him with the intent to bring an attempted murder charge that could put him away in the state of Florida for life. The states had to take over the investigation because the state attorney, who's a left-wing Democrat, contributor to MSNBC, wouldn't pursue the case. There's a lot more to this. Be right back. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
But the message is it's time to stop the lies, stop the hoaxes, stop the smears, stop the lawfare or the fake lawsuits against me, and stop claiming your opponents will turn America into a dictatorship. Give me a break. Because the fact is that I'm not a threat to democracy. They are.
The former and God willing next president of the United States. This is the most important election of our lives. I've never been that person. There's never been a time that's been doing this 27 years. Never was a time that I came on and said, this is the most important election of our lives. This one is. There's no doubt that this is a point of no return kind of election. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. Mark, right up until game time, I'm like literally about 5 minutes out from game time, he was not able to go. He was trying to do everything he could to be with you. He had major surgery just 2 days ago, tough as nails, and but he wanted to put on a good show for you. And with all the pain and everything else, just did not think he was going to be able to do it. And so pleased to have the opportunity to be with you. Just wish it wasn't like this. And, pray for Mark. The good news is the surgery, a success. So now he just needs to heal up and he'll be. Can you imagine? When Mark is feeling good again, with everything that's going on and everything is you're probably going to hear the best shows out of Mark Levin you've ever heard. It is. I'm excited for when that's happening. So anyway, I've been walking you through the threat to democracy thing and how that narrative has been fully reinstalled by the left. That is the talking point today. All over MSNBC, spewed here and there in the rest of your godless souls and slanderous news media. You have prominent people that yet again are fanning the flames. Here we are, just 4 days removed from the second assassination attempt on Trump. I mean, they were saying it the next day, but it's all chips on the table. Because, of course, they care more about winning this election than they do anything that has to do with right and wrong, good and evil. Oh, they are the folks of evil here. One of the other things that I've been walking you through in this is something smells like a rat. So you have not, on the national level, been in the middle of this the way that I have. So I am the host of The Brian Mudd Show. My home station is WJNO in West Palm Beach, where I'm only a few miles away from Mar-a-Lago, and where I've been right in the middle of this second Trump assassination attempt. My wife and I enjoying our wine on Sunday afternoon when everything hit the fan, and have not stopped since. And I've got a lot of perspective for you, in part because of the state investigation, as I've been working with the state and in regular contact with them on what they've been doing in their investigation, and with the intent to bring charges on attempted murder, which the feds evidently cannot do. You have the second Trump assassin right now. It's being held on 2 federal gun charges. That's it. And the state attorney who has jurisdiction in Palm Beach County, who is a left-wing Democrat, a regular contributor to MSNBC, but historically a solid prosecutor, wash his hands of this thing. Now, not only did he wash his hands of this thing and decide he wasn't going to be cooperative when you had the governor step in, he issued a statement to me when we were going back and forth earlier in the week. One of his comments also was highly revealing. One of his comments was this. He said, if law enforcement provides my office with a request to file charges, we will review it like every other matter. Okay, so what he's talking about, he said the governor can authorize an FDLE investigation, which he's done. If the Florida Department of Law Enforcement concludes the investigation, hands him the case. So he's not cooperative. He hasn't done anything, but this is your jurisdiction. Go prosecute this case. He's not saying, okay, I will make sure that I pursue this to the fullest extent of the law to make sure that we send a loud and clear message, not only to this would-be assassin, so he never has an opportunity to do this, but to anybody else. What will happen to you if you try to kill Donald Trump or any president of the United States or any person, period, that is running for political office? I mean, think about the implications here. But instead, what he said is, we will review it like every other matter. Like it's, what, the 100th case that hit his desk that day? Like just another drug case that hit his desk that we'll review like every other matter? Now, here's the other thing that stinks about this. There is another assassination threat locally within Palm Beach County that you most certainly have not heard of. Unless you are local, not even really across the state of Florida has this been reported on much. So if you go back to the first Trump assassination attempt, there's a man by the name of Michael Weissman. He lives in Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is northern Palm Beach County. So same county that Trump lives in, same county as Mar-a-Lago, as West Palm Beach, and same jurisdiction as Dave Ehrenberg. So you had Michael Weissman, who went on social media and posted things like this. He said, Trump and Vance should be murdered before turning us into West Russia. No time like the present. Ready, aim, fire, rinse, and repeat. He said stuff like that over and over again on social media. And by the way, some of what is deeply disturbing and sick, Mr. Producer had a clip of Willie from C-SPAN yesterday who was echoing those sentiments. You had people that were liking these posts. You imagine somebody post that on social media and go, yeah, right on. That was happening. So he's arrested. All right. So going back a couple months ago now, he's arrested. He's run up on a second-degree felony charge. That is punishable in the state of Florida by up to 15 years in jail. Now, let's think about this. You have had an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. He's been shot. You have somebody in his own backyard who then goes on social media and says that Trump and Vance should be murdered and is explicit in this. He's arrested and charged with a second-degree felony, which is the appropriate charge. He can get up to 15 years in jail. What do you think should happen here? Do you think this individual should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law to try to send a message to people that, hey, this should never happen? Do you think maybe should be prosecuted halfway under the law? Right, so we're not going to go for 15 years. We'll go for 7.5. Do you think we should really go for anything under the law? So here's the next thing that happened. The state attorney, Dave Ehrenberg, he turns around and on Tuesday, the same day that Ron DeSantis and Ashley Moody, Florida's attorney general, announce a state investigation into Ryan Ruth, the second Trump assassin, going after maximum charges in the state of Florida to try to keep this guy behind bars for life. The same day, that the state prosecutor with jurisdiction is uncooperative, washes his hands, says it's all feds. That's it. Guess what he did in this other case, this Michael Weissman case that you haven't heard about? He downgraded the second-degree felony charge, I should say his office, downgraded the second-degree felony charge to a third-degree offense with mental health considerations. This is what you have to do to be able to get around the second-degree felony, to put them in a diversion program. Because under Florida law, you can take a second-degree felony and do a diversion program. But if there are mental health considerations, we can use that loophole. We can downgrade this offense. We can then put you in a diversion program. So rather than prosecuting this guy to the full extent of the law, to half the extent of the law, to really anything under the law, he actually does an end around using a loophole within the law to put this guy in a mental health program, offer him a diversion program where his record can be expunged and he can own guns again within a year in Trump's backyard. What kind of message does that send? What do you think is going on there exactly? And so here is part of the larger point that I'm working to illustrate. You have the narrative that is out there that Trump is the threat to democracy. Still, he still is. We said it for years. We're not going to back down now. He really is the threat to democracy. They've radicalized two of their people up to this point to actually act in trying to kill Donald Trump. You have other people like this Michael Weissman who have gone so far as to explicitly state that Trump and Vance should be murdered and in some respects detail how that should happen. And the answer is to not prosecute really at all. What's going on here? And so I have specific questions for the state prosecutor, Dave Ehrenberg, in Palm Beach County. But what is the bigger objective here in terms of the media establishment? Again, Dave, a MSNBC contributor, somebody who went from being cooperative Sunday afternoon to completely uncooperative by Monday morning, completely washing his hands of the assassination case by Tuesday, state taking over, who then on that same day, with a separate case, bends Florida law, exploits a loophole to get a guy into a diversion program. There's a bigger picture that's going on here. They're not just encouraging the narrative that Trump is a threat to democracy by way of actions and prosecutorial decisions. They're flat out encouraging it. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Now they care, because now the border is 25 times worse than it was in 2016. Now the border is not even believable what's happening. And I want to be known as your border president. I'm going to be known as your border president. And Kamala will be known as your invasion president.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Rare form. There is something about him doing a rally in New York that just, it's hard to explain. And maybe it's just because he feels it, you know, his home, his backyard, all that. But yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. The Gutfeld stuff last night was great with Trump as well. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. I want to switch gears here as we head down the home stretch of the show a bit. I on Friday left off with you talking about how Trump is still positioned to win, and don't be dispirited because of the media's narrative after the presidential debate that, you know, Trump was waxed and that Harris was, you know, just going to mop the floor with him the rest of the way, all that. I pointed out all of the research that we saw indicated that really only 4% of voters going into the debate were truly undecided. So the debate really only about 4% of the folks that are out there. Everybody else, the rest of us, we were going to vote for our candidate no matter what. We're just rooting for our teams at that point. So if you felt, for example, like, Trump had a rough night, he could have, he missed opportunities, and then the dishonest moderators and all that. If you're an undecided voter, why is it that you're an undecided voter? Well, you know what Donald Trump represents, right? So obviously he hasn't been disqualifying for you. Otherwise, you would be decided the other way. So if you're considering him, why? Well, we found out from the focus groups, a lot of the focus groups like New York Times and Reuters and the like, that they don't like Donald Trump, but they realized their lives were better when he was president. They were willing to see if Kamala Harris, who had avoided media policy positions, if she would offer something of substance. And what we saw is that widely undecided voters did not come out of that debate feeling like she provided specifics, that she gave them what they were looking for. In fact, in these focus groups, we commonly saw more of them breaking towards Trump after that because they saw that she was had no cattle. It wasn't just that she was avoiding media, it's that there really wasn't anything there. So let me walk this forward a little bit with some of the narrative busting, because now, I mentioned that that Trump was positioned to win, but what we are really seeing as more data comes in is that the narrative has been busted about the debate and everything else in the direction of this particular election. One of the things that I think is interesting, just in analyzing a bunch of data that is out there, the oldest accredited pollster in the history of this country is Gallup. They've been polling American politics since the 1930s. Now, you don't see Gallup these days that will do the head-to-head presidential poll and predict who's going to win and all that. But what they do is they contextually poll on a bunch of things, politics and otherwise. And one of those categories, they came out with their latest drop yesterday. And they didn't bring any attention to the favorability ratings between Trump and Harris. But I was looking at the data, and I noticed something that I'd never seen before. In the history of the Gallup poll, whichever presidential candidate was the most favored in their September poll preceding a November presidential election, that candidate won the popular vote. There's never been a favorability poll in September that Gallup dropped where the person that was most favored didn't go on to win the national popular vote. And this is not the purpose with which Gallup advanced this. Again, they didn't provide any commentary around this. I just looked at the data and like, hold on, I'm noticing a pattern here going all the way back. And so it's possible, if not likely, that this is actually the most historically accurate prediction of presidential popular vote winners in American history. I mean, it would be hard to be better than perfect. But guess which candidate the Gallup poll showed as having the highest favorability rating? Yesterday, Gallup showed Trump at 46% favorability. Harris, 44%. So not only did Trump have a 2% edge in favorability, that grew to 9% among independents. Yet again, what I was talking about, like with the debate and everything else, how independents, true undecided, saw the debate differently. Better among independents than people at large, more favorable. There's even more to this. I'm going to bring you a couple other nuggets that go along with this here in a moment. So there's a lot of encouraging data out there for Trump. Be right back. Brian Mudd in for the great one, Mark Levin.
If you're trying to reach Mark on the air, call him at 877-381-3811. The Mark Levin Radio Show continues.
And just today, 3 agencies of the Kamala Harris and Joe Biden administration, the FBI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they just released a report confirming that Iran actors hacked into the Trump campaign's email accounts and in turn sought to give the hacked materials to the Biden-Harris campaign. They gave them all of the materials because Biden is working with Iran, and Iran doesn't exactly like me because they were ready to make a deal, except we had an election that was rigged and stolen.
Yeah, and so you think about this. I mean, how fascinating is it that this hack took place a long time ago? Biden campaign ends up getting this, and then the FBI is like, yeah, they so Iran did share hacked Trump data with the Biden campaign. Back to you. And where is the coverage on this? Oh, that's right. The coverage in your godless souls and slanderous news media today is Trump is a threat to democracy. I tell you, I mean, this election is that important. The corruption of the news media establishment is equal to the corruption of your federal government, which is corrupt as hell. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. You can check me out socially at Brian Mudd Radio, the Brian Mudd Show podcast, wherever you get your podcast. And I was just mentioning this one little data point that came out that caught my attention yesterday. We have so much polling, all the stuff that's going on right now, but this one stood out to me. It was the favorability rating in the Gallup poll, and it was just by chance. And I took a look at it, and it did catch my attention that Trump was shown with an advantage over Harris in favorability. It's the first poll, literally, I've ever seen where Trump had an advantage over anybody in the favorability rating. But it wasn't just that. I took a look at it, and then I started looking. It's just kind of the way I work as an analyst. I looked at everything historically, the favorability ratings in the September Gallup poll. And what I saw was, well, look at that. The person who had the highest favorability rating, the presidential candidate in Gallup's September poll, won the national popular vote every single time. Now, this is where I'll walk it forward a little bit. So think about this for a moment. Couple things on the favorability. Trump shown with an edge here. By the way, the edge grows to 9% among independents, which is a strong sign. On this date in 2016, Trump's favorability in that same Gallup poll was 33%. 33. Now, the Hildebeest was at 38. And it wasn't like people liked her either. But still, I mean, 5 points higher than Trump, and Trump was at 33. In 2020, on this date, Trump's favorability rating was 41. Here, Trump stands at 46 and a couple points ahead of Kamala Harris. It's a narrative buster. It's a big-time narrative buster. And here's the thing that you're probably well aware of. Trump doesn't likely need to win the national popular vote to win this election. Of course, he won the election when he lost the popular vote by just over 2% in 2016. So in other words, if everything that's happened in this Gallup poll historically were wrong for the first time this election, that would still be okay, as long as it's not off by a ton. Like, it could be off by over 4 points, and that's okay. Trump likely still wins. And it would be a great election down ballot for Republicans as well, because, as you well know, Trump has performed far better in swing states than he has in the national popular vote in both elections. So in the grand scheme of data kind of coming together here, the anecdotal information immediately after the debate from the undecided voters, some of the initial polling we saw that showed that undecided voters were breaking commonly for Trump and not Harris. Now favorability coming in this Gallup information with the best showing that Trump has ever had at any point in the cycle. We're 47 days away from Election Day. There is a lot that I believe that you can feel good about as we are heading down the home stretch of this election. Donald Trump is positioned to win. Let's go to Jacqueline in Brooklyn, patiently hanging on. Jacqueline, thank you so much for hanging in there, and welcome to the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Brian. Thank you very much for taking my call. I wanted to share something. You had mentioned earlier in the show a couple of people who made a very insightful in the wrong way statements about President Trump. And I just wanted to add one to your list. Kathy Griffin, the comedian, when she held up that prop head of the bloody decapitated President Trump. But that's okay, because they're allowed to do things like that. But what I had really called you about was I heard from Congressman Andy Biggs, there's a high-level active duty senior DHS official who confirmed that there are 5 groups within the United States that want to assassinate President Trump, as well as 3 foreign government groups. No surprise, China, Russia, and Iran.
Yeah, I heard the same thing actually today. Congressman Matt Gaetz was talking about it to Floridians and coming from the same House committee, and it really paints a picture, right? Here you have, and we were told after the first assassination attempt, oh yeah, by the way, the Iranians have had an active plot out there against Trump. It was like, oh, okay, well, it's nice for us to hear that now. So why again was it that you didn't have anybody on that roof? What was up with the lack of personnel they had in place and allowing the former president to get shot out there? So that yes, and yes. And none of it is really that big of a surprise if you think about it. But then you put it in the context of, okay, so we just had a second assassination attempt, and here the left is talking about Trump being the threat to democracy. Obviously, the biggest threat to democracy are those that are trying to kill the former executive branch in this country and the leading candidate right now to be the executive branch in January. Clearly, that would be the greatest threat to democracy. And it also speaks volumes about the extent to which all these bad actors would go to try to exact that outcome. And you talk about those bad actors, those countries specifically, it's no surprise because, as I have often said, and it's always important because these countries do not operate in a vacuum. They are the new axis. You do not have Iran that is just Iran. You do not have China that is just China. You do not have Russia that is just Russia. You do not have North Korea and Little Rocket Man that's operating out there, lobbing missiles into the Pacific on his own. You don't have Cuba that is just Cuba. You don't have Nicaragua that is just Nicaragua. You don't have Venezuela that is just Venezuela. They're all an unholy alliance working together. So when you hear 3 of those countries have hits out on Trump basically in this country in real time, not terribly big surprise because this is what they do. They work together on various different evil things that act against our interests. But it certainly makes you wonder why you're not sweeping a golf course in a very populated area, high trafficked area before Donald Trump gets on it. Let's go to Bruce in Pennsylvania, the critical state of Pennsylvania. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thank you for taking my call, Brian.
Yes, sir. Thanks for being here.
Okay, so the only thing I wanted to say, this will make me extremely happy if people like you and all the other conservative pundits and the people that go on and talk to cringe, like Peter Ducey and what have you, all the talk show radio people start using the term when they say really bad things like Trump is Hitler, Trump is a threat to democracy, and things like that, that they start using the term, this is despicable hate speech, and it needs to stop. Use the terms hate speech and pound on that every day. Every one of you guys need to start using it for those terms.
All right, fair enough. I think that is a good call to action because it is hate speech and it is, something that is rotten to its core. So, yeah, the hate speech thing, I do think there's a chance that there's traction to it. I am hopeful that for the 4%ers again, that in terms of to the extent that they're animated by this, they recognize it for what it is as well. That is something that I on one hand, I go, how in the world could these people be undecided? On the other hand, I do intellectually understand it. And these people are actively seeking information. I can't imagine that, they're tuning in to MSNBC, hearing Hillary talk about Trump being the threat to democracy, and them fanning the flames of it and going, yeah, you know what? Now I'm going to vote for Kamala. I don't think that's what they're in it for. So I do think, at least there's that. Go win us, Pennsylvania. Let's go to Scott in Montana. Scott, welcome to the show. Do we have you, Scott? All right. Janet in California. Janet, welcome to the show.
So much for taking my call, Brian.
You bet.
What I was calling about is the Second Amendment reads a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They took out the part that a well-regulated militia against the tyrant fraudulent government. And I feel like our Declaration of Independence can be redirected to our present-day government, and it should make them leave without firing a shot.
Oh, well, Janet, there are a couple things. The irony of the Second Amendment is the uncomfortable truth for many of which you speak, which is the entire point of the Second Amendment. Again, you got to remember context for this, too. This is what is also never taught, in school. You have what? You have people who literally killed a bunch of Brits to the point where they said mercy to grant freedom, to grant independence for this country. So the United States came about because they were repressed. And so what did they do? Well, they had to use a lot of guns and things. So they protected that in case the government ever became tyrannical again. And so on that point, you are correct. On the other hand, what we need to be worried about right now has nothing to do with that. It has to do with winning this election in 47 days. You get out to the ballot box and you vote. And that is how you take this country back. I'm Brian Mudd, in for the great one.
Mark Levin.
Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin. As we head down the home stretch, I was just telling Mr. Producer something that I think I would probably be remiss if I didn't bring it to you. So much that I will not have an opportunity to get to. Check out the Brian Mudd Show podcast. I'll bring all this to you in time. But Ryan Ruth, so the second Trump assassin, one of the things that worked on immediately after the assassination attempt. And again, I'm here in the Palm Beaches. This is my backyard. I've been involved in investigating this case. But right away, I noticed that he was of Hawaii, but registered to vote in both Hawaii and North Carolina. And so one of the things I was working on this week, trying to confirm after we learned that he voted in North Carolina, did he in fact illegally vote in North Carolina? And the answer is yes. So the full-time residence for Ryan Ruth had been since 2018 Hawaii. And his wife, the various addresses in her name, that is where he has been. His business, everything else, he's been a full-time resident of Hawaii. Now, Hawaii does not communicate with other states. So in the Heritage Foundation, their election integrity, their state-by-state election integrity scorecard, Hawaii's at 27 out of 100 points. They're terrible at it. And so there's no communication between Hawaii and North Carolina. North Carolina, what did they do? Well, they hadn't had any communication with an election since 2016 with Ryan Ruth, the Trump assassin. So they put him on inactive after 5 years. What did they do after that? Ryan Ruth decides he wants to vote in North Carolina this year. So he goes back and say, I still live here, and reconfirmed the address that had been on file. They took him out of inactive status, made him active again, and let him vote. Now, if this is happening in North Carolina with a man who just tried to assassinate Donald Trump, how many other instances are there similar but different in North Carolina where people are staying on voter rolls that shouldn't be because they don't adequately clean their voter rolls? What about states like Hawaii that don't have any communication with other states when somebody becomes a full-time resident to see, if they are still registered in other states? How many people do stuff like this intentionally and abuse the system and take advantage of it? It's just another part of the story. Nobody will talk about this. It doesn't get looked into. It doesn't get addressed. You don't. If you're worried about election integrity, you don't have to look any further for an example of it that's happened. Voter fraud in North Carolina with the man who just tried to assassinate Donald Trump, and it happened this year. Anyway, there you go. I would like to leave you on a more positive note. Trump is still positioned to win. Mark, hopefully he'll be back with you tomorrow. It's been a pleasure. Brian Mudd in for Mark Levin.